She made fun of me in front of everyone. Today, she's the one humbly knocking on my door. That day seemed like any other. I'd left the house early, my eyes still heavy with sleep, wearing the first clean clothes I could find, a loose, faded t-shirt with a slightly frayed collar and sweatpants that had seen better days. My hair tied in a hasty bun and my makeup-free face betrayed the accumulated fatigue of weeks. But for me, that was the least of it. I just wanted to get to the hospital where my mother was admitted and have time to help her with her morning shower. I didn't even care about the mirror anymore. My priority was elsewhere. I took the building's elevator down, pressing the button hastily. When it opened, she was already inside, Laura, my neighbor from 1203. Tall, tanned, wearing skin-tight designer jeans, stiletto heels, and a crisp white blouse. Her perfume was lingering. I entered silently, pulling my battered bag aside. I tried to take up as little space as possible, as I always did. In the muffled silence of that elevator, all it took was for her to cast a quick, mocking glance at my outfit to know what was coming next. She couldn't help herself. She let out a soft chuckle, then turned to her boyfriend beside her and said, loud enough to echo off the steel walls, "Some people think they're at home, right? This is a building, not a laundromat." Her boyfriend gave a forced laugh. I pretended it wasn't me. I stared at the elevator display, counting the floors as if they were a countdown to relief. But she continued, "At least you could comb your hair, right? It looks like it came out of the trash." Those words cut me more than I cared to admit. My eyes stung, but I held it in. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I remained silent, firm, swallowing my shame and anger at the same time. I wanted to get out of there. I wanted to disappear. The elevator seemed to rise slower than ever. When it finally reached the ground floor, she came out laughing, swaying in her heels, pulling her boyfriend by the hand as if nothing had happened. And I stood there for a few seconds, alone in the elevator, with a lump in my throat and a heavy heart. It wasn't the first time she'd made nasty comments. But that day was different. Because that day I was at my limit. Because that day I didn't even have the strength to defend myself. I left the building with my eyes downcast, feeling each step weigh heavy. At the entrance, the doorman gave me a slightly embarrassed look, as if he'd heard everything too but didn't know how to react. He simply wished me a good morning, and I just nodded. On the way to the bus stop, I kept reliving it all in my head, wondering if I deserved this. If my appearance justified that kind of humiliation. For a moment, I felt dirty, inferior, invisible. But it was in that moment, there at the bus stop, surrounded by honking horns, hurried people, and the sounds of a big city, that I realized something. That woman had no idea of the battle I faced every day. She saw old clothes. She saw fatigue. She saw neglect. But she didn't see my struggle. She didn't know I woke up at 5 in the morning to care for my mother with Alzheimer's. That I cleaned 3 times a week to pay for her medication. That I barely ate to save money. That old sweatshirt had been a gift from my mother on a Christmas when all she could give me was affection. She knew nothing. And yet, she thought she could laugh. In that moment, still at the bus stop, with my heart wounded and my pride in tatters, I promised myself I would never again let that pain turn into shame. I would transform it into strength. I would rise. But with silence. With work. Without needing to avenge myself with words. And fate. Oh, fate was already writing the next part of this story. But she was still going to find out. After that day in the elevator, the neighbor from 803, who didn't even know my name, seemed to make a point of laughing every time she saw me. Sometimes she was with a friend and they whispered to each other. Other times, she just looked me up and down, like someone doing a social X-ray and deciding you were worth less. At first, it bothered me. I'd come home wondering if I really looked that ridiculous, if there was something wrong with my outfit. But it took a while to understand that the problem wasn't my appearance. It was the discomfort she felt seeing me standing there, smiling, even without anything luxurious to show off. I'm a cleaner. And very proud of it. I work in 3 different apartments, and at the end of the day, I come down the elevator in my work clothes, sometimes with a broom or bucket in my hands. I never hid who I was. But to her, that seemed like a reason for mockery. But what she didn't know, or pretended not to know, is that those who live by appearances end up trapped by them. And that those who carry truth, carry dignity. A few days later, we met again in the elevator. I was carrying a cake I'd baked for one of the residents, who'd asked me to deliver it. She looked at it, made a disgusted face, and said, "Are you selling food now too?" I took a deep breath and replied with a smile, "Yes, I am. Work doesn't scare me. Laziness does." She choked on her own mockery and remained silent until the elevator opened. But at that moment, I noticed something shift in her. An uneasiness, an unease. As if she were fighting to remain superior, even though there was no reason to be. Time passed, and I grew. One of the residents, Mr. Armando, retired and recommended me to run the lunchbox business he ran with his wife. I started cooking, organizing deliveries, and making contacts. Orders grew. I created an Instagram account with photos of the dishes. Soon, I became a local reference. From Monday to Saturday, I delivered hot meals to at least 10 apartments. And of course, I always passed by 803. At first, she would close the door before I could say, "Good morning." Then she fell silent. But one day, she broke. She opened the door slowly, looked down the empty hallway, and whispered, "Are you the one making these lunchboxes?" The one at 502 showed me a picture. "It looks so good." I just smiled and replied, "Yes. Want to try it?" And there, in that hallway, she finally let her guard down. For the first time, she didn't mock me. For the first time, she spoke to me like someone in need, and who recognizes the value of others. Life went on, and even with the humiliation of that afternoon etched in my memory, I decided not to harbor resentment. I continued my routine, now with a little more caution when leaving the house. I started working from home, sewing on commission. Little by little, I built my clientele. It wasn't much, but I was able to pay my bills and dream of basic needs again. During this period, I noticed that the activity in my neighbor's apartment had drastically decreased. She, who had once been surrounded by people, now lived with the blinds closed and a weary expression on her face. One day, we passed each other again in the elevator. This time, she didn't laugh. In fact, she couldn't even look me in the eye. She was haggard, dressed simply, with a strong smell of food clinging to her hands. I discovered she had lost her job and, to survive, had turned to selling lunchboxes. I saw her in the garage, with a huge styrofoam box in the trunk of her car, sweating, going up and down to make deliveries. And that's when something unexpected happened. She knocked on my door. With her eyes downcast, she asked if I wanted to buy a lunchbox. I said yes. I bought it, paying in advance for 3. Not out of revenge, nor pity, but because I knew what it was like to be at rock bottom. The food was simple, but well prepared. She thanked me quietly and left. Deep down, I knew. The wheel was turning. Over the next few days, she returned a few times to deliver more lunchboxes. Each visit was silent, but filled with a weight that only those who have swallowed their pride know. Little by little, her gaze changed. Until one day, before delivering the meal, she took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry. I was horrible to you that day. Laughing at your outfit. Today I would give anything for a job like yours." I was silent for a few seconds. That haughty, mocking woman was gone. In her place was someone whom life had broken, not out of malice, but to teach me. I responded with a sincere smile, "We never know what tomorrow will bring. But there's always time to start over with humility." She nodded, tears in her eyes. Since then, our relationship has changed. We never became close friends, but there was a sense of respect. And that was enough. I continued with my sewing, she with the lunchboxes. But the difference was that now, every time the doorbell rang, there was humanity between us. Not superiority, nor revenge. Just two human beings who, in their own way, learned over time. Life taught me that those who laugh today may cry tomorrow. And those who cry in silence may well be applauded later. I didn't need revenge. Time showed me that what truly matters is character. Because appearance changes. Status changes. But what you do to others when no one is looking, that remains.